Wanted to thank you all, first of all, for the annual sales meeting at the Houstonian. I thought it was a nice day. I hope you enjoyed the spa treatments. I got a lot of compliments and thank yous from all that. And hopefully it was a good recap of 2013 and a forecast for 2014. I thought it was a great day. Thank you all.
It was a great day.
Yeah, absolutely. Reminder from that, we're going to gear into the book club stuff starting next week or whatever. We have 36 people that have signed up. If you don't want to book, that's perfectly all right. But if you're interested, we're ordering the books today for the first quarter or whatever. This first round is basically on selling yourself, how to sell more effectively, that sort of thing. 21.5 is the name of the first book that we're doing. We'll give you the book in advance, and then we're going to start talking about it over the next couple of weeks. So if you're interested, please check with Selena one more time and let us know. She can check the list there. If you haven't turned in your questionnaires or any of your other forms also, Selena's there. We've still got 4 or 5 people that you can turn in a little paperwork here. We're going to send out a little reminder to you individually if you haven't done so. If you'll take the opportunity to do so, I would appreciate it. Our Toast to the New Year is our next event that's coming up. The invitations look like this. We put some bungalows. I put a modern bungalow house on there, just kind of a generic one. But there are little houses that go out there, and then it's basically the invitation. It's getting mailed out today. Should be there in about 3 or 4 days or whatever. Telling them about Wednesday, January 29th, 5:30 to 7:30 here at the office or whatever. It's a great opportunity to invite your past clients, great opportunity to invite some future clients. We will have a few announcements, nothing earth-shattering again, all positive or whatever, that will be here. So I'm looking forward to a nice little crowd.
Can you get that electronically too?
Yes. Aaron, you can send it out to them. Yes.
So who's that supposed to go to, Bill?
This goes to all of the clients for life. There's about 4,000 that we're mailing out. Eric emailed each of you your clients for life. I just went over mine again. I took out the dead people. I took out the divorced people and then figured out where I needed to go there. They had made a couple of errors on some of, when we take the HUD, if you sell a house, we're taking, and you were the listing agent, we're adding the buyer to your list, so you automatically got a buyer, even though you didn't represent the buyer if their sister-in-law represented them, and 3 years later, the sister-in-law is no longer in real estate. I want them to have gotten stuff from you for several years, so they're more apt to go back. If you were the listing agent originally, you probably have a fighting chance of being the listing agent if their agent is no longer really that affiliated with them. So you're picking up new buyers from that, and then you're taking your old listing, and if they move to Cyprus, we're adding their Cyprus address. So verify that your clients for life there. If you have Eileen and Eric Olson and they divorced, and if people are sensitive, they do not want to get mail to their ex-wife at their house or whatever. They get sensitive about it, and we look kind of silly or whatever. So I think you've got to look at your list or whatever and see how it's done. Like I say, I had Jude Petronella on there. We don't need to spend 54 cents. He died 8 months ago. I don't need him on my list anymore. So if you'll check yours, but that's who they went to. Clients for Life, there'll be some extra ones, and there'll be electronic versions
So
going
you
out for
can
that.
send it to people you're working with?
Absolutely. If you just add them to any list, if you just, like I add my Heights Association board members into my Clients for Life. Yeah, I've added Del Fullen to my Client for Life. People that I do business with, Jennifer Hernandez. You can add any of those kind of key component people into your life. Ann Collada never bought a house from me, but she's on my list. And Chris Silkwood never bought a house, but I want them to get these invitations in the mail or whatever. So certainly you can add anyone that's a core person to your group into your list for sure. So Wednesday, January 29th.
And what do you call that again?
What
It's
time?
the Toast to the New Year, 5:30 to 7:30.
Perfect. What database is that in? Is it
Eric.
software?
Excel. He sent me.
It's in Excel.
He sent mine
I
to me
can
in Excel.
go
I
from
went
an
through
It's
actual
not
database
like,
to an
okay,
Excel.
okay, that's what I want to know. So if I
Actually,
update in
I-
Excel, you can import it into whatever software.
Yeah.
Then if you ever want just the labels of your Clients for Life, we can print out the labels. We send them to a service and they print them, so it goes printed, not a label on the invitations or whatever. But if you'll update all that, we've sent it out today, so hopefully you updated already, but you can continually update your list there. Making sure that you're getting acquainted with the staff, Selena, everyone interacting with Selena, who's our weekday receptionist here, and Joe sent out an email. If you didn't come by this weekend, Joe is our new weekend receptionist here. I think he's going to be fabulous. And Tony is here from the Montrose office, Kirby office. If you want to visit with him, he's here. We had Train, and she was our weekend receptionist for Kirby. She's had a health issue and already had to quit us, so we're still looking for a weekend receptionist for Kirby or whatever. If you know someone that's interested, let me know about that. Our movie night, January 10th for Urban Dorothy was great. If you didn't get the chance to go, I thought it was really, really nice this time or whatever. So thank you, Ms. Pettit, for putting on that. I think it's very good. We will definitely have some more of these venues at Forstein Fuse. Should be coming. We had a great time last week with Dr. Ted Jones, who had the economic forecast that Stuart Title put on. He's the chief economist for Stuart Title. His basic forecast was things are going to be very good in 2014. They may not be as great as they were in 2013 as a percentage, but overall, Houston economy booming, housing will do better, a number of sales will be fine, median price will go up because of the stress in the marketplace. Overall, all of his economic factors were positive. He has a pretty humorous response. If you're interested in his presentation in PDF format, I have it now or whatever. If you're interested, we're happy to email it out. I don't want to email all these things out if you guys just don't care about it. But do you want me to email it out?
Yeah.
I'll email it out. We'll email it out here in just a bit.
Yes, that's please.
It's actually a PowerPoint.
Is that what it is? Did you look at it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's another one. So Ted Jones is one of the most forecast economists. The next group is Metro Study. We're in the series of these presentations. There's a new presentation next Tuesday. It's earlier, it's 7 to 9. It's next Tuesday. If you're interested in going to this, which is at the Junior Service League, I'm happy to sign you up for this. You just need to let me know if you want to go, and I'll sign you up through.
Speaking of that.
It's all the Metro Study people, and so most of it is housing, or whatever. Some of it is just trends, some of it's interest rates, some of it's energy.
You know what I'm asking, are they giving a person that's the presenter?
Dan Jarvis.
Not there?
David Jarvis.
No, David.
What was the other guy's name?
Mike Henselman.
He's gone, so he's the new Mike Inselman.
Right. Well, he's one of them.
Yeah. So if you're interested in this, let me know. We'll have to sign up here relatively quickly. I'm sure you've heard that Lorna's father passed away or whatever. The service is today. If you're interested, I left information here. I think it's at 2 o'clock. I don't know if anyone's going. There may be a number of people going. And if you need directions or anything, it's there.
Lorna's address and.
Sure. Yeah, sure, no, you can, sure. A couple of small updates. We talked about the flood insurance stuff at the annual meeting. I noticed almost immediately the next day, HAR put a little disclosure deal asking you to contact your congressman about that. Congress did pass one extension already, delaying the immediate impact basically to October. Their Senate is voting later today to extend that again until 2015. So there's been some movement already. Want to be clear, they're just kicking down the road what is inevitable. The subsidy for flood insurance will be reduced. So if you sell in a high-risk area, if you're in Galveston, if you're on Brays Bayou, if you're next to TC Jester, the likelihood is that the flood insurance will significantly increase in the near future, as much as 10 times the current rate. So if you're paying $2,500, you could be paying $25,000.
What about Cottage Grove and Sandy Acres?
All those areas are, the old houses for sure, okay? So if you're in the old subsidy versus the new subsidy, your rate is going up significantly. If you're a brand new house in Cottage Grove and you built it up, so it's a newer home, I don't think the impact's going to be near as great as it is going to be an older home or whatever. So it's all in the news state. Senate's voted today again about it, and it's going to delay the immediate impact. If you're selling a house, you don't want to be the bad guy 5 years from now. You're going to have to alert the people that, yes, it's $1,500 today, seems palatable, but if you're in a high-risk area and you're in an older home, then the likelihood is that there's gonna be significant increase. In a newer home, probably not gonna be as significant.
Are there any historic districts within the high-risk areas?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I can't think of
So
one.
it'll pretty much all be new construction.
Yes,
Well, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Galveston.
is.
Galveston,
but
definitely.
it was
Is
around.
that new development on Arrowville?
Where is it?
On Arrowville and Hollywood area?
If it's new construction, I mean, they're gonna build up out, the maps are the same, so they're gonna build up high enough where it's, I mean, the federal minimum may go from 377 to 677, that's insignificant. It's the $2,500 deal that goes to 5,000 the next year, and 8,000 the year after that, and 15,000 when you have to resell it 5 years from now. That's gonna be the problem.
Arrowville didn't flood that, did it?
No. Okay. We're gonna have more information about homestead exemption also. Just a little reminder, people who sold last year have from January 1 to April 30th to fill out the homestead application. The most important thing they need to be doing now is getting their driver's license in alignment with their new deal, because you can't go to April 30th and send in your homestead application and not have a copy of your driver's license with the same address. So
And
you
the
need to
same
be.
name,
Do what?
and the same name. Like my mom, actually, we're going through that right now because on her driver's license is the only place where her maiden name is. Everything else is her middle name. So she had some issues with something else, but still, it was, your name's gotta match. Your name is Patsy Horton Power on one document and Patsy LaRue Power on something else.
They look for reasons to deny homestead
Yeah.
applications. They get more taxes that way, so anything they can do to make it more complicated. We're gonna have information for you to send back out. I don't wanna confuse the people this early in the year because they have a little more time. They have till April 30th, so we'll probably take it back up again in February. The key is get them to go online to Texas Department of Public Safety, tvps.com, and go over there and change your driver's license to the same address. Yes, Jake?
If 3 people buy a house, parents help their daughter, and the daughter lives in it, can she claim 100% homestead?
She can try.
Okay.
Yeah, she can try. Do the parents have homestead someplace
Yeah,
else?
exactly.
Then theoretically, yes. You know, she can claim 100% of that as her homestead, then yes, she ought to be able to do that. But there again, they look for reasons to deny, so if they asked for a copy of the deed and it had 3 names on it, then theoretically, they could say she only had 1/3 ownership and only gets 1/3 of the homestead exemption. It's possible
Okay.
they could deny her, but theoretically, under the grand concept, she could, because they have homestead someplace else, and that's her homestead.
That's the only letter I haven't written yet this year because I didn't know. So.
Right.
Do we have anything canned that goes through those, what you just said?
Yes,
reminders?
yes, I was really gonna send it out in February, I was just alerting you beforehand,
I got you.
but we can send a brief little thing today in preparation of filling out your homestead application between January 1 and April 30th. This is a reminder to start by getting your driver's license, and here's the link, we can send that out later today also.
Okay,
No problem.
thank you.
And I also want to note to all those people that were, that do things in advance, that if they filed for homestead exemption last year, they're gonna have to file it again, because they
Purge
screw
the
up.
files of
Yeah,
everything that was not there December 31st. So if you closed November 30th and you went and sent, and they gave you that packet at Stewart Title, and you filled out that form and sent it over there, it makes absolutely nothing to do with
If you
it.
sent it
Yeah.
last year, you bought last year, you sent it
Must
last year,
send
you got to
it.
send it in, because they threw it away.
Is it
After
January 1 after the period of time.
Sure, because that's
Yeah,
what you're
we do
testing
something
where you
else.
lived on
That's
January
proper.
1, not
Right.
where you predict you're living.
That's
so,
correct.
You know.
We purged the system, wouldn't matter.
It is
Start
a
over.
confusing fact.
It is confusing, and you do
Yeah.
have people that are proactive,
Right.
and it's like, they want you, but
Especially when it already had homestead exemption from the, the seller had homestead exemption, they're assuming they're gonna automatically get it, and they're not automatically gonna get it, because HCAT's gonna pull up the MLS and says, there's a new buyer, the new buyer didn't apply for homestead. Yes.
Now, let's say that you do have one of these overachievers and they don't know that they're being kicked out. There is a way, even after April 30th, that they can go back
There
and
is. You can go back.
retroactively do it,
Yeah,
yes.
it's complicated, but there is. There is. I mean, there is.
I've had somebody have to do that.
Right. Okay, I don't want to confuse this on our topic today, so it's going to get cumbersome, but we're going to talk about contract changes, that are already gone into effect January 1, those that are going to go into effect in February 10th, okay? Already in your zip form, most of all of the lease situations, the lease listing agreement, the lease application, the pet agreement, the deposit, all of those changes have already taken place into zip forms or whatever. And I would like to review the lease changes that are in effect, and I'd like to talk about the contract changes that are going into effect so that you're aware of them. So if you pull up a lease listing agreement on zip form today, the new form at the bottom has January 1, 2014 at the bottom, okay? I've given you the red line version of what is a lease and a lease application. I'm going to start with the listing agreement, and I just wanted you to see how you could see the red line changes, because when they're already on zip forms, they're not highlighted in red. So that's really for us to discuss in just a moment. I'm not going to expect you to go line by line and go over it. I just want to go over some of the reasons of the changes and what's happening. In the lease listing agreement,
We don't have.
Yeah, we
no,
don't
you don't even have
that.
that.
Okay.
We're just conceptually talking here for a moment, okay? In the lease listing agreement or whatever, there were three minor changes that I think were worth noting. They're trying to track, TAR, the local associations want the information on the MLS. That's the only thing we have versus, consumers who can go get a lot of information. Is realtors have information if it's on the MLS, and if it's not on the MLS, we don't have access to the stuff, remember? So, of course, thriving economy, we talked about it, even Bob Hill talked about it. People are more apt to not put things on MLS. They're going to sell things off MLS. They're going to have more FSBOs of that sort of nature. So they're clarifying that we're encouraging people to be on the MLS, and they've clarified if we fill out a deal, a listing agreement, and during the term of the agreement, January 1 till December 31st, 2014, okay? And if in the middle of the listing agreement, we withdraw the listing. I took off 520 Omar because my people wanted a break for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Might be normal. They might want to take it off during spring break and have the college kids come back and mess up the house. If you sell the house while it's withdrawn from the multiple listing service, but listed, the information is still required to go back onto the multiple listing service, okay?
Lease, not sold, you're talking about lease.
This is the lease listing agreement, but yes, it will be the same thing in the listing agreement for sale. But yes, so it's clarifying that during the term of the listing, that if we've checked that the information is going to be on the MLS, even if it's withdrawn, you're going to put it back on the MLS once it's sold or whatever, leased, whatever. Okay? They want clarity about how that's going to work. Okay? Not too complicated on the leases. Then in the lease listing agreement, they want to make clear that while we have to abide by the fair housing laws with regards to race, creed, handicap, all that sort of stuff we talked about a couple of months ago, our obligation as realtors is to abide by the National Code of Ethics also. Greater level of scrutiny than just the fair housing laws, okay? So you must honor the Code of Ethics with regards to the listing and the lease agreement, okay? They tried to make that clarified. Then they're clarifying what the seller's responsibility is with these. We've determined that smoke detectors are not good enough. We can't just detect smoke, we must alarm people. So they've changed detectors to alarms, which is fine. Now we're going to alarm somebody. And that we have responsibility about the keys, locks on windows, locks on sliding glass doors, locks, keyless locks, and how all that's going to work. They're clarifying the seller's responsibility with regards to the locks and how it works there, and how smoke alarms are required to work in rental properties. Okay? Not too complicated in the lease listing agreement. Don't think that's too complicated. Okay? All these are going to be available for you to review, and they're all online at TAR, but it gets very confusing because there were proposals, there were some changes, there were modifications, then there was the adoption. When they're adopted, they no longer show up in red, so you have to take the first draft, highlight in yellow, and see if the words change. So that's why I didn't pass out everything, because it's very complicated how it's going to work. We're still in the leasing mode. So the residential lease changed to some degree also, okay? So And I provided you a copy of some of these changes so you can kind of get a sample of what we're talking about. The lease and its automatic renewal is better clarified in the first section of the lease. And it took out a whole paragraph about oral things, that everything must be in writing, there's no oral agreements. One more time, it was all clear that there were no oral agreements, but there used to be a whole paragraph about oral agreements, and they've taken that whole paragraph out, which was at the bottom of section 4.
Now they're moving it up, but they moved it up.
They moved it up to be clear, yes, in the beginning of section 4. Okay? If you start out with no pet, and you have a $2,000 deposit, and then you add 2 dogs, and you got a $600 deposit, you added $600, and then 2 months later you decide you no longer want the dogs anymore, and you give the dogs to the girlfriend because you broke up and she moved out or whatever, the $600 remains, as you don't refund back the $600, it became the total part of the security deposit and would be refunded at the end of the lease. We haven't been able to verify all the damage from the dog or whatever there.
So where are you on that?
Alright, on number 10, any additional deposits tenant pays to landlord other than the security deposit will become part of the security deposit. If they're late 5 months in a row and the owner wants them to put up an additional $2,000 security deposit because of their tardiness, which they might be able to do, then that total becomes the security deposit. All of it, any addition would become part of the security deposit. Okay? Not too complicated there. Flipping through. Okay? Trip charges, they probably made some of the more significant changes to, I think, in theory about how it works here. The trip charges, if I'm going to inspect the property next Saturday, okay, I want access, and you call the tenant, and you give them 24 hours notice. If they reply or not, and you go over there, because you've met the letter of the law, you've notified them that you're going to go, and they deadbolted the lock at the top where you can't get in, then you can charge them a trip charge for that event now, okay? You gave them proper notice, and you were going there, and now you can't get in, you could charge the tenant a fee. If you were going to the house, the AC guy was, and they put the dog in, and the AC guy now can't get in because the dog prevented the AC repairman, scared to get into the utility room where the access to the attic is, and you've denied the repairman the ability to get where he needs to go, you could charge a trip charge. If you went over there and they were supposed to leave the alarm off, the AC repairman went and opened the door, and the alarm went off, you can shut the door and charge the tenant a trip charge. You've denied them access, and you can charge them a trip charge for that, provided you had a trip charge in the lease, of course. Okay? So they must grant you, when you've provided proper notice and have been denied access, you can collect a trip charge there. Okay? So you can't be denied access when you've been given proper deal. Don't think that's too complicated. Under 17, we've added that the tenant, at the tenant's expense, is going to maintain bed bugs. Okay? The landlord is not going to be responsible should there be bed bugs in the bed that's owned by the tenant. Okay? Some of these things. There you go.
Had to do it because it was an issue.
Right.
More than once.
If the tenant is required to maintain the yard, and there's a management company, which many of the places have management companies, and the management company has to get involved, you can certainly charge the fee of the management company now, not just the $25 to go mow the yard, or $75 to do the pest control. If the management company charges a fee, you can pass the fee on to the tenant. Okay? If you deny smoking, we're clear that it's denying smoking both in the primary structure and in any secondary structure, including the garages. You can't go out into the garage and smoke if smoking is prohibited on the property. The garage is part of the property. Don't know how hard that one is. The repair request can be made to the landlord or any property manager. Or they tried to add property manager in everything. It's landlord or property manager everywhere. The repair cost, again, I tried to clarify what this is. I think we kind of covered that one before. Okay, 19 on page 11, the whole lease extended by 1 page. But it's talking again, and the red one is probably good for you to know about the window latches on every window. You have to be able, the tenant must be able to keep their property secure. A keyed doorknob or keyed deadbolt lock on each exterior door. A sliding door pin lock on each exterior sliding glass door of the dwelling. A sliding door handle latch or sliding door security bar on each exterior sliding glass door of the dwelling. Keyless bolting device and door viewer on each exterior door of the dwelling. That one's new.
That is new.
Peephole's new. Okay? Required under the property code. On the rentals. Early termination, this was probably good. Tenant is not entitled to an early termination due to voluntary or involuntary job or school transfers, changes in marital status, loss of employment, loss of co-tenants, changes in health, or purchases of property or death. Okay?
That's good, yeah.
I have to make it any clearer over there.
So if they die, their estate has to pay
Right.
out the rest of the lease, is that what
There you
you're
go.
saying?
The state's still into it. You might be able to terminate if there are stalkers. I noticed they added a little stalking
Yes.
language in here. We had a stalking issue earlier. So sex offenses have added stalking. Sex offenses are stalking.
What if they're talking in there?
Let's see. Copyright, no big deal. Liability insurance. Property manager. Minor changes to the lease. Yes, dear.
Okay, so if there's a previous lease in place,
Uh-huh.
let's use my own personal property.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so we just renewed one of my garage apartments.
Okay.
So we renewed it with the one-page renewal form.
We got a whole
Okay.
explanation on the
Okay,
rules over here.
okay. So, but it was from the previous lease, not the January 1st lease. Do I now still have to comply with this lease?
Yes, you do.
When I renew next time,
Yes,
even
you
though I'm
do.
renewing
Yes,
from
you
a,
do.
okay.
I've got one.
There it
Yes.
is.
Yeah, they sent me this whole little deal on it. Yes.
Hey, Bill, on the sex offenders,
Sex
then,
offenders are stalkers.
are you
There's stalkers, don't forget
So
those
you have
stalkers.
to notify them of that website?
Yes, you
and
do.
You do,
Uh-huh.
but you don't have to print it out.
Uh-uh.
This is
Just give them the
you
website.
tell them where
It's in the generic, it's in the general information, still there for the tenants.
I have a
Okay.
question.
We don't
real
use
quick.
general information for the tenants, we use the broker notice, is it?
Right.
We should for the tenants now.
General notice?
Uh-huh,
General
Tenant as
information
well.
to a buyer?
uh-huh.
You know, tenant?
Gives them the sex offenders and the school boundaries.
Or we could
Yes.
just.
Oh.
If someone's breaking a lease, but they found a sublet,
Uh-huh. That's
are they
acceptable.
still
There's
responsible?
no subletting.
Yeah.
If they found a replacement that the owner finds acceptable,
Yeah, right.
they're still required to pay the deficiency of any deficiency, the cost of reletting or any lost income, if the landlord, owner, finds the new person acceptable.
Uh-huh. But
Can't
then
double
who's
charge.
responsible for that property? Like if anything goes wrong, is it the person that's under the lease?
You
or
can
is
sign a
it?
new lease. We don't ever
Sign-
really do any subletting. No, we enter into a new lease with another person. Even if we take that person and substitute the name, they're now in a lease.
They've entered a lease with the owner.
That's correct.
Because I had a friend that asked me about that, who would be responsible. So they enter into a new lease.
That's correct.
Who has to do- Who has to do the lease, the owner?
Well, either party. Brian had lease 1018 Balin, his client got transferred, they asked to get out of the lease, we asked the owner said, it's fine, you're gonna pay the deficiency, okay? So we found another tenant, I think they moved out on the 18th of 1 month, the new tenant moved in on the 25th. They're gonna pay the 7 days, cost the owner $3,000 to release it, charge them I'm just making up the number, $3,000, the 7 days, plus we took from their deposit the cost to take down some shelves, repaint it,
Repaint,
pull off the
carpet.
trash that they left there.
Uh-huh.
We charged them that entire fee or whatever.
Uh-huh.
Then Kenny's new client, now entered into a new lease altogether over here.
Uh-huh.
So,
Okay. How about, it used to be just the 30-day notice. Can you do a 60-day
you
notice
sure
on
you
that?
can.
Yeah,
Sure you can.
that's
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
I
I agree.
I pretty much almost always do
Sure
60
can.
days.
So what do you typically put on
That's
page
back on
13
that.
of that paragraph
At least
B?
45.
Where
Team,
assignment, subletting, thing that either the tenant or the landlord
Yeah,
pays
no,
if
no,
you're
no, no, no.
agreeing. What do you just?
I'm not in that, what paragraph?
Okay, it's on page 13.
Oh, page 13,
It's
paragraph.
on, paragraph B.
We don't allow a subletting.
I don't put no stuff, no stuff.
Yeah, just put,
Just put no.
no, nay,
No, no, no.
no, can't do. Don't even think about it.
We don't
Yeah,
allow
that's
subletting.
actually what the language says, y'all, is no subletting.
We don't allow subletting.
Yeah, what, I mean, what in the language in the contract says no subletting, it just gives the landlord a chance to either put, say 100, you owe me 100%, meaning a whole extra month if you break your lease, or 50% if you find the tenant or whatever. It gives you that opportunity.
That's not what that paragraph
But
is?
no, 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 no.
Okay.
Then if they want out,
Mhm.
and they understand what the property code says, which is they're gonna cost, they're gonna pay whatever, if the owner has to take an ad in the Chronicle and it's $85, you know, or the owner has to, let's say that person's, the market's wrong. Let's say they're paying $2,000 a month and the new tenant only pays $1,850. You can charge the $150 for the remaining 6 months of the lease to that person and take it out of their deposit or hold it, you know, file it at
The
their credit.
problem is, especially if people are transferring away, it's very difficult to collect. So,
File it on the credit
Yeah,
report.
there's
Well, yeah,
security
I mean, you can
deposit,
file it on the credit
security
report,
deposit back, I guess.
Yeah,
You can take
but
it out of the
it's
security
difficult.
deposit.
Sure you can take it out of the deficiency, sure you can.
yeah, and that, I mean, that's really your main
Okay,
source of.
on the lease applications, we get a copy of this? Okay, then they moved up to the very, very top up here. The applicant is strongly encouraged to view the property prior to submitting any applications, and the landlord makes no express or implied warranties to the property. Applicant requests the landlord to consider the following repairs should the applicant and landlord ever enter into an agreement. Right up top here, if they want it clean before they moved in, or a new oven, or season fan blade.
That's
Before
on
you
page
stop.
3, it's not up top.
I know, but in the real one, that's,
Oh.
they took the language from page 3
Oh,
when they
got it.
were in the adoption phase, and they actually moved it all the way to the very top
Okay.
of the real form to make it very clear to people, what the hell do you want in consideration of your application? Don't submit an application, and then your applicant is accepted, and then over in special provisions, the lease, they've added 19 new items over there. You know, remove the bunk beds that were permanently installed, add plantation shutters, re-roof, and give me a new air conditioning unit. If we'd known that as a consideration of your application probably would have been tossed over there. Okay? So we want to know what they want in consideration of their application along with the lease up at the very front. Okay?
So this is on 3 now that you're.
3 was in the promulgated in your version, in the proposed, but in the actual one, they moved it all the way up to the top.
Okay.
They added landlord or property manager for all, so we can call the old property manager, you know, not just the owner or something. Then, if the applicant would like for us to consider any other sort of income, we created a whole new line over here. If they're winning the lottery and they're gonna get their new disbursement in 2015 and they want us to know about it, it's always the divorce proceeds. And the proceeds from, you know, divorced, husband, we're selling the house, same thing. We're constantly getting about their debt. We need to know about their debt. You can be totally current on all your payments, but have $200,000 worth of student loans that are going to come due here now that you're out of college taking your first job, and all of a sudden your monthly payment for your student loans, which have been $15 a month, are going to be $500 a month. We probably needed to know that you had $200,000 worth of student debt that was going to come due next month. Okay? So they need to disclose that. And then we're really getting into all these pets. And you're going to see it on the other one about the mammals, and they worded it in the application about your pets being mammals or otherwise known as, we want to know about your reptiles, your insects.
Your 15-foot boa
Iguanas.
constrictor.
Your bed bugs.
Can you refuse?
Sure you can. Sure you can.
I went into a small apartment the
Crustaceans.
other day, it made too much noise.
Wait, hang on, hey, wait.
What do you
Yeah.
think it was gonna do
On the
on
fish
there?
thing, I went into a small apartment the other day that had several aquariums, and they created a humidity problem.
Yes, they
So
do.
do you think
Okay.
they wanna know about all their,
So, we made it, they haven't been as clear application, they still word it dogs, cats, birds, reptiles, fish, and other pets, okay? On the pet agreement, which we've added a few more lines so that you could add all of your pets, which we've defined now as any animal, whether a mammal or not, which could include reptile, birds, fish, rodents, or insects. Okay? If you have pet rats, we'd like to know about it. Or if you're going to keep a bunch of crickets over there that you're going to fry on Friday night, we want to know about your 5,000 cricket farm, or your ant farm, or your boa constrictor. Those are all pets, because you're maintaining them. So they tried to clarify that in the pet agreement. We've added a few more lines over here.
Is chicken in there?
Chickens are not, they're
Chickens are not in
mammal or
there?
otherwise.
Oh,
I wonder.
Then they clarified also about this access. If you have a pet, and we're gonna come walk through the property, and we give proper notice, and we can't walk to the backyard because your dog is keeping us from walking, you've restricted our access to what is our property. You know, and they can't restrict the access due to the past. It's the entirety of the property, including the garage, behind the garage, in the backyard, wherever. If the rats are in the attic, we can't go up in the attic because they're pet rats, you're denying access. We have access to the entire property in the pet agreement.
I showed a property in Rice Military a couple of months ago that had a snake.
They didn't tell you beforehand
And they did not tell us.
that it was out in the...
No, he was in a deal, but freaked me completely.
Yeah, I would think you want to notify someone that there's a snake. I got a listing where they had a snake
little
loose in
cat
their
boat.
bedroom. It's not in a cage.
Python, 8 feet long.
You can have that. But I've certainly notified the people of that. Okay, so lease agreement, lease listing agreement, lease application, pet agreement, even inventory and condition form modified. All these can modify, but when they fill out the inventory and condition form over here, and they say the exhaust fan isn't working in the middle bathroom and the closet light isn't on or whatever, they made it real clear. Inventory and condition form is not a repair request. Just because you've noted that the exhaust fan doesn't work in the middle bathroom, submit all requests for repairs separately in accordance with your lease. The inventory and condition form was not a request to repair any of the items. It was just an indication that the items did not work at the time.
That's nothing new though, I mean, they always have that.
I know, they're trying to make it as clear as possible.
Because there's someone dumb out there.
That's right, that's exactly why they did that.
Here is the whole little explanation about your lease extensions and how they're going to work. And there's a little 3-page explanation with the 1-page extension or whatever to answer your question. But yes, they want you, even if you're in the old form, to renew with the current new form. Okay?
That's an extension?
Well, this is the explanation of the extension. They removed most of the language from these extensions and made it much more simplified over here.
So if I was representing.
They took this extension and they modified it down to 1 page.
So if you have somebody who's currently on the old form,
Uh-huh.
they want you to go back and get a new one?
No, that's not what I'm saying. You must use the new extension in order to extend. You don't have to redo the whole
Going
lease.
forward.
But why wouldn't you redo the whole lease if you're a landlord, so that way they know exactly what
We
their
think that's
expectations are?
advisable, but you're not required.
Okay.
You're not
Especially
required,
if
that
it's
you can just,
something
must use the new extension form, not the old extension form.
Okay.
Yes?
But then it gets into that weird thing because we represented the first transaction, but we don't get compensated in most leases for recurring, whatever they call it. So
Extension.
then, or do we come back in? The landlord's not supposed to use that
I mean,
form. What's
they're
supposed to-
telling us, yes, it's damn confusing if you're using an old form, you know, and you should consider using a new form, but they're not requiring you to use an updated lease. You can use the new extension.
But
with the old
who's
lease.
supposed to do it? Like now your clients are, you know, they're coming to that
We just
first
do it for
year.
them for free.
Uh-huh.
We just do it for them for free. Give them the
It
new.
automatically
Well, that's
renews
cool with
month
that.
to
You
month.
give them the
It
renewal.
automatically renews month to month.
Month
If
to
you
month,
didn't,
but
if you
wanted
didn't
to
have
use-
that you were gonna
if
get
you
paid
do
for
a new
renewal,
lease,
yeah,
no
we
terms.
just give them the renewal for free. We just give them
Okay, well,
the
that's
renewal.
good.
You know. I just give-
I don't mind doing it, I just,
No,
No?
yeah, that's what I was worried about, cause I don't mind doing it, it just
And
keeps
you
you.
No.
get
Client for
all the-
life, right
Closer
there,
to your-
watch it
yeah.
out for them.
if
No,
we
it's
originally had done a
closer
lease
to your
with the
landlord.
lease listing agreement, and you wanna give them the form to extend or extend, and we didn't get paperwork, it's no more liability than we already have.
And if you
Okay.
represented the tenant, then you should send them a copy of the new lease and say, by the way, when you renew, this is what the new lease is. If your guy doesn't do it, client for life, man.
Absolutely.
Client for
Depends
Yeah,
on who
life.
you
no, that,
represent.
it's always a good excuse to.
I mean, I would enter in
Communicate
a
with
new
them.
lease
Yeah,
as
that's
opposed to
what I
doing
would
the
do.
extension,
That's what we will be doing.
but
You're not gonna get paid to do that.
you're not gonna get rid of that.
Yeah, but client for life, as we're saying back here, you know, it just
Yeah.
keeps,
Yeah.
it's
Keep 'em happy.
you make yourself useful to your
Right.
landlords, you know?
Okay,
One more reason to get in their
Because they
face.
may sell
Say,
it.
"Hey, I'm here."
point one
Oh,
is
yeah.
that all the lease forms changed a
Keep
little
that.
bit, none of it's earth shattering, but you're gonna notice the new deals should have the new date down there. If you work with Gordon Turner, and he's been doing it for 40 years, and he's still got the forms in the back of his car over there, he's gonna use an old form, make them use the new form for leases that went into effect January 1. Okay? Alright, what's gonna get confusing is the contracts are going to change in February, okay? Should go into effect February 10th. And they only have some red line versions of these out, but there's still minor modifications going on. I don't think there's anything earth shattering, okay? I don't think there's anything earth shattering, but there are some clarifications. In the listing agreement, the same basic thing, the MLS that was in the lease is gonna pop over to there. And there again, they're adding this whole little paragraph to encourage the seller to keep the information on the MLS. Their intention is to try and get more information on the MLS, and they want them to fully understand that, you know, we don't have any information if it's not on the MLS. But, you know, people can still choose not to be on the MLS. I don't really care, you know, if they don't want to be on the MLS. Some people just don't want to be on the MLS. Same thing we've talked about before, they've changed we have to abide by the code of ethics, which is a more stringent rule than the fair housing law with regards to things. No real problem there. In the contract itself, minor things, I mean, they're reclassifying some things from property. The title commitment, they're extending the period. Title companies are busier than they used to be, so now we're going to give them even a greater period of time to provide the title commitment or whatever. So it's going to extend the period that they have. Theoretically, they have until 3 days of closing now to give you the title commitment, which seems silly. So, I mean, even in all the comments, if your title company needs this long, you need to switch title
Yeah,
companies.
that's
I mean, they made it very clear. I don't know why we're even doing this, but they're granting the title companies who have a lot of influence a break
How
or
many days
whatever.
is it now that they're granting?
It's an extension of 15 days
Okay.
or 3 days before closing. The way the front one reads. They added whole new paragraphs about these propane gas system service areas. I don't really think it applies to too much of us unless you're the Durr selling out over here in Winchester or whatever, where there might be propane gas system service areas. You're going to start seeing that. They're tweaking the languages as is one more time because it's already so confusing. They're going to make it even more confusing about the as is, you know, but it's still got all this language about as is does not mean that the buyer can't inspect, discover new defects, negotiate repairs, and still terminate in the event that they don't find it. But they're trying to make it a little clear about what as is.
Yeah, they need to, because it really confusing.
Added whole new paragraphs that the seller, when you enter into a contract, cannot extend, renew, or enter into a new lease without the consent of the buyer. Because here's all these people over here who miss their triplex, and then they go renegotiate all the leases over here while they're under contract. Let's make it real clear. It's going to be in bold. Do not extend, renew, or enter into an agreement when you're contractually obligated to sell this property because you're binding this new buyer into these new things. So from the effective date, you can't do one of those things without permission of the buyer in writing. Okay? Now, if you just did nothing and some things automatically are going to extend, they're just going to automatically extend under the current terms that the buyer already was aware of to begin with. Okay? So they added a whole new paragraph about that. Repairs. They're tweaking this language on the repairs to make it clear that when a buyer negotiates a repair, a competent individual must do the repair, okay? So if there's leaking around the flashing of the vent pipe upstairs, and the buyer requests that that be repaired, that isn't the homeowner going up there who's never repaired a leak around the flashing vent pipe ever before, going up there and putting some glue up there, okay? They've worded it such that if there's not a licensed person, because some things don't require a license, all repairs and treatments must be performed by persons who are commercially engaged in the trade of providing such repairs and treatments, okay? You got it? Now, a roofer is a roofer. It isn't Uncle Jed, who once did it on his RV, you know, somewhere. So it's letting people know that competent individuals are required to do the repairs or whatever. And it gives more time in the event that we can't agree that the repair was done satisfactorily, extends that day a little bit. But it's designed to have competent people do the repairs, okay? Leases, we've talked about that or whatever. Mediation's going to be automatic. It was already automatic. I mean, the law was going to send us to mediation. They don't have to agree to mediation, but they're going to send you, and you go and say, I don't want to abide by binding arbitration. Well, then you go to the court
Finally,
system, which
because
is
every lawyer-
11 years down the road, you could get to court.
Every lawyer argues with them.
I understand.
Everyone.
I understand.
So,
Another thing, option period, your time to deliver the money. Appears like it's going to go back from 2 days to 3 days now. This holiday weekend was getting people over here, and they're, you know, reinforcing time is of the essence, time is of the essence, and they're going to insert a little line in there that says, dropping it in the mailbox does not qualify as delivery. Okay, they're going to make it clear you got to deliver the option fee somewhere and have it receipted. Now 3 days instead of 2 days. Okay. And then they made it clear on the back page, no one has to sign, the agents don't have to sign that, you're just putting the names of the supervisor, you're putting the name of who you are, you're not signing, none of these title companies could read these signatures anyway. So they just want you to put the name of the licensed supervisor and put the name of the associate who you are, either the buyer's agent or the seller's agent. There's some minor modification to the contract coming online. I don't think there's anything major over there. Repairs, option period, option delivery of check, 3 days versus 2. Those are probably the biggest things going on there. In the notice of the flood hazards, I think flooding is going to be a big deal. They've inserted a whole little paragraph here that was never there before about the elevation certificate, encouraging all buyers to get an elevation certificate and have someone who's knowledgeable explain an elevation certificate to you. So we used to have this notice about special flood hazard areas. It never really talked about elevation certificates. New one talks about elevation certificates. Explains what it is and why they should get one.
For everybody?
If you're in a special flood district, you know.
I make
so-
all my buyers sign that.
Yeah, most big firms do also. I mean, if you're high rise, you probably don't need to worry about it, but I mean, I would do that. These contingencies, they added the word in writing to the notices so that you had to notify the seller of the waiver. Notifying them is not telling them, telling the other agent, it's putting it in writing. An email is writing. So they clarified a minor thing there. Minor changes to contract. February 10th, they go into effect. Inspectors had changes that went into effect January 1. Don't know if you've gotten a new inspection or whatever, but they've clarified their standard language in their forms also. Trying to make a couple of things help this, I thought. Some of the things really help inspectors more than us or whatever. But I mean, it's talking about two things that I think might be significant. They're trying to take any liability away from the inspectors that's not the primary structure, which they're now interpreting to mean they're not inspecting or accountable for decks, detached structures, fences, equipment that's attached outside of the house. You know, if your water heater's on the outside of the house, anything that's on the outside, I mean, a deck and a balcony are the biggest things. They don't want to be held accountable for exterior features outside of the primary structure. Okay? We'll see how that works. I don't know how it's going to work.
Why do you think that is?
Connie represented Tyler Flood on a balcony, and Danelle's ex-husband or whatever was the inspector, and the balcony leaked 3 years later, and he's still in a lawsuit with Robert, 5 years later, and Robert's saying it was underneath, all this stuff. How would I know if the porch leaked or not? I didn't go put a water hose up there and stand out on the balcony, whatever, with the hose, with pressure water to see if that leaked or not. I did not see any signs of leaking from within the house. I didn't have any responsibility outside of the house. They don't know these decks and porches that are connected to the house. They don't know if they're connected properly or not. Half the people walk underneath the houses, crawl underneath the houses. So it's the security of the deck, and when it's falling off the house a year later, 2 years later, they want to go back to the inspector. I think those are the two things that are getting people, the inspector world. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm saying they're at the
You
getting.
said exterior as if the water heater's exterior, but your AC condenser is
I understand.
exterior.
They didn't mention it in these forms so far, but I agree with what you're saying. I mean, that's a mechanical thing that surely they're going to inspect. Everyone's going to require the water heaters on the posted on the outside of the house. I think what they're more apt to say is the bracket that holds the water heater at is not as mechanical as the mechanical water heater. And then they are trying to help us out and make it clear in the form that these inspections are not code inspections. This inspector is not required to know the code of the city of Bunker Hill or the city of Westview or the city of Houston. They're not saying it is or is not within the code. That's a whole different reference. They have a whole different standard for things there. Nor are they allowed, but they all seem to estimate the life or adequacy of a particular function. They're not supposed to say the life of this deal is 5 more years. How would they know what the life of it is? They can just, so there's going to be some changes. You'll start seeing them relatively quickly in the new inspections there. I wouldn't fret over any of those.
So the question, if they don't give an actual number, can they still say the water heater appears to be near the end of its serviceable life? Like say it's toward the end, even if they don't give it?
I think they're going to be able to say that there's a general standard, just like you can. I mean, a roof does last between 20 and 30 years, which might be 5 or it might be 50. Who really knows? I think surely they're going to have to be able to give you a range of what's the norm, but they can't say this life expectancy is only 5 more years.
Right.
They're not going to be able to say that.
But they can say
the range
appears to be toward the end.
Yes. Or yeah.
Some of them are really pretty good about saying the normal expected life of a water heater is X. This water heater appears to be, this 15 years. This water heater appears to be 12 years. So it may be nearing the end of its life. When they say something like that, I usually feel more comfortable. When they say, it's shot. It's when they give me estimates too.
Anyone not using zip forms? Anybody use something else other than zip forms? I mean, these forms automatically update on zip forms, so it's no big deal. Yes, Jim?
Yeah, I have a question that I want to ask at the end of the meeting.
Okay. We're now. I think my point is some of these changes have already been there. If you've done a lease application, it's already there. If you've done a lease recently, those changes were already in effect. It seems like the contract ones are just going to go right there. They're not going to make any big brouhaha. They didn't make anything. It wasn't on the cover of Texas Realtor magazine. It's hard for me to find these changes myself, I'll be honest with you. But they're going to be minor changes kicking into play, so other people won't know what they're doing. Other than that, toast to the new year. Hope that you come and invite your friends, relatives, family.
There was, if anybody saw the Leader and the Leader last week and the Chronicle on Sunday, there were great write-ups in there about the historic district things that are going on. Very interesting how how Sue Lovell has now.
I noticed Miss Lovell called me yesterday and wants to have lunch on Friday.
Yeah, she's
I will.
She's now, and for those of you who didn't read it, she's now on the bandwagon to redo the preservation ordinances, and so are 3 of the council people, including our own Ellen Cohen, that apparently as Myron refers to it, the hysterical district, or the hysterical committee, is just now choosing at random what they like and what they don't like, instead of following any guidelines.
She's right, but let me just say this. the mayor is not going to
There'll be
let
changes.
the historic ordinance on the agenda.
She only has a couple of more years in office, though.
It will get changed probably when she gets out, but the way city council works is the mayor decides what goes on the agenda, and there can be a table amendment at any point during a meeting, and it can totally get away from the mayor, and she will never allow that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
they are just whistling in the
I
wind
just thought
at
it was
this point.
interesting that it was in both papers.
Well, we never had enough hardcore data, you know, 'cause no
Yeah.
matter what you said before, they could say something else. At least now you have the example. The ordinance says 75% back. If you put it at 87, they want you at 100. If you put it at 100, they want you to modify something else. I mean, there's
Yeah.
consistent voting
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
on behalf of
And
HHC.
the lawsuit that is going forward, it was a March something deadline
There's
to
a
where
Mar-
the courts could declare the whole thing unconstitutional.
Right.
Well,
So it's
yeah.
it was interesting,
It's
very
very
interesting.
interesting, very,
yeah.
very interesting. For those of us that have been involved for 5 or 6 years. Yes, Jim?
Yeah, that was my question,
Second
was the
career.
leader articles.
I think it's nice to have the leader involved. I think the Chronicle's a little more receptive. They were so far into the mayor's camp before that we didn't really get unbiased coverage or whatever. And
We
they
got
always
really
tried to
biased
label us.
coverage negative towards us,
Yeah, yeah.
so.
It's, you know, they need design guidelines. I mean, it's common sense. If you're gonna have a historic district and limit the use of property, that people should know what the limitations are. Really, they should know before they vote whether or not they want to be in the district or not. How can you create a district and say, we're gonna give you a guideline 6 months later? That seems backwards. And then still, how are you gonna get who's gonna determine the criteria and what input are the local homeowners gonna have? Or is it just gonna be determined by someone at 611 Walker, you know, on the 8th floor? I don't think that's fair. The people who are most impacted should have a say into the design guidelines. But so it's a huge fight on how it will work. Like what Kathleen's saying is, if it goes before council, who must approve the design guidelines, you can modify anything in the ordinance, which might allow us to have a provision to get out, or have a recount, or a new survey done, or reclassification
Or
of
go back to the
non-contributing
90-day
structures.
waiver, or
I mean, we're in this stupid ordeal to classify an area as a historic district. You have to have a certain percentage of the houses must meet the criteria. Well, they never could get to that criteria in most of our districts or whatever. So now, all church buildings, it doesn't matter when they were built, 1971 church buildings in our historic district are now contributing structures because they needed so many because they didn't have enough contributing structures. So how is the First Baptist Church, built in 1971 out of red brick on a slab, a contributing structure? But don't get me started.
Well, they've done things like, said there was a house here recently that was moved into the district, in the 70s. It was not an original structure.
It's where Chase Bank used to be, which is well outside the district, and they moved it there in 1971,
But none,
and now it's
not-
a contributing structure.
now it's contributing structure, but not only is that, it has no original windows, no original siding, no original porch. And there's nothing original on obviously no original roof. There's nothing original on the exterior, and yet they consider that a contributing structure. I mean, the definition of what is historic has stretched to, contemporary times, which is insane.
They did the survey, they never submitted to the homeowners and said, we're going to place your home as a contributing structure, would you like to provide any additional information? Or we never had the ability to argue with them whether or not it was contributing or not. I mean, it's fundamentally, it is unconstitutional.
Yeah, and they said that someone on Fraser, there are lots of examples in the article, someone on Fraser were remodeling their house and they didn't know if the commission would want gables or no gables. So they brought in plans of both, and the commission said gables. And then a house right down the street that was the same house went in with plans that had a gable because that was what the commission wanted, and they were denied.
I thought the best one was Sam Bastian's statement about
Yeah.
he was going in and say, what will you approve?
Yeah.
They won't
yeah.
tell you what they
Yeah.
will approve, they'll
Yeah.
tell you what they won't approve.
Yeah. And I also read, speaking of development property, that, the place, the old
Poultry plant.
poultry plant on 12th and Rutland has
That's
been
it.
sold.
Right.
Really? Apartment buildings?
No,
he doesn't.
single family house.
Yeah, he built some.
No, it's Michael Bastion.
Yeah.
It's Michael Bastion.
It's not gonna, because that was what I read, that there were gonna be townhouses or something there, no?
That's the kind of rumors that the historical preservation people
But it
start.
wasn't for them, it was from
But-
the land
no,
use committee from the Heights Association.
But that's where those people reside.
No.
That whole group
They're single family.
of this,
Okay.
of people on the land use committee and that reside in the Heights, I mean, that's basically who drives all of this. The mayors,
No, I'd argue with you.
communication, well,
Another time.
well, that's how.
Janice, she's referring to the old ones, Janice Evans.
Janice Evans and all those people, some of them
Yeah.
still reside on the land use
Yeah.
committee.
Yeah,
And
they don't
that's
go
where
too
that
much.
gets started.
Any, Tony?
Can I tell you about a new listing?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's for lease,
Uh-huh.
and it's at 2520 Robin Hood Kirby Condos. It's on the 6th floor. It's so beautiful. It's a 2-bedroom with a study, 2-story, and they put about 15,000 into it, so it's like, and their taste is impeccable. I feel like I should list it at 3,700, but I said, let's go with 3,500. Now I'm thinking maybe I should have said 3,700, so I'd like someone's opinion on that.
See what your
It's
feedback
easier to
is.
go up than it is to go down.
I know, that's why I went ahead and did 3,500.
Yeah.
So, but I really, I'd hate for them to not get the, what they can
And
get.
Durst is gone out of that building now,
Yeah,
right?
Mhm.
If there are a lot of applications, you'll know if it
But,
should go up.
The
it's,
murderer, you know,
Oh,
the air murderer.
It can
He
go
used
up
to
real
live-
quick.
He used to live on that same floor, right?
Really?
The
Look,
sixth
can I give y'all
floor.
All right,
my
we're
last
at
number?
the end of our hour. Anyone else have any comment? Yes,
I
Jane?
have one thing, Heights Home Tour is the first weekend in April, well, they already know that. I'm the head docent at one of the houses, so everybody, check your calendars and see if you have 3 hours on either Saturday.
What house are you, head of the
409 8th.
West 8th?
Yes, Palmer Schooley, it's,
General rate.
yes, I know, he said it, yes, he's a friend. So, of course you will be there.
Good.
It's very cool, it's very mod. He's done some interesting things, but the homeowner ahead of him had done some interesting things. So it's a very cool house. It's online. You go to Palmer Schooley Design or Schooley Design at 409 West 8th. You can see pictures.
Cool.
So,
That's a cool one to look at.
huh?
How much are tickets today?
Tickets are gonna be $25. Julie's probably better able to answer that. $25. They're not gonna sell individual tickets.
$20 in advance,
Oh,
$25 day of the tour.
They, no individual home tickets.
Yes, there are.
No,
No.
they
We
cut
didn't
them
provide
out.
that again. I was at the last meeting and we added them back. You'd buy individual tickets at the fire station.
No,
Nope. That's what they
no
said at
individual
the
tickets.
first meeting, no individual.
Well, I know at the first meeting, but at the revised meeting, those of us that protested that said we're gonna turn away 200 people are gonna be mad as hell.
I'm telling you,
We'll see.
I was
Well,
told,
that's what they said at the meeting between homeowners and
I was
docents and
told to
committee
put
people.
in all the
That's
communications, no individual tickets.
So anyway.
Thank you
everyone mark
everyone.
your
Happy New
calendar.
Year. You're gonna have so many.
Is it
activities.
Vincent Tree?
It really is.
Oh, really?
And he's done.